Hey everybody, Garcia here, and today I'm going to be ranking all of the character powers in Pandemic. Not Legacy Pandemic, don't worry, there's no spoilers here. I happen to keep my Pandemic game with all of its expansions in this box. Don't go. I'm not going to ruin anything, let's do that again. Today I'm going to be ranking all of the character powers in Pandemic. That includes all of the ones in the base game, as well as the ones from the expansions, including the expansions that came out after the game got reprinted and don't actually work with this one, unless you got, well, they had this upgrade pack where you could, I don't have my original box anymore, okay? But I'm going to be ranking all of the original characters, all of the ones that they added to the reprint. There was 2 that are not in here. And then they added a bunch of them in expansions, all right? Just, here we go. Before I get started, I do want to mention I'm not going to be going over these alternate versions of characters. These are older characters that have been given new powers to work with specific expansions in the game. And I'm also not going to be going over these characters that require specific expansions to be in play, such as this one that requires the Hinterlands challenge, and this one in which you must be using quarantines, both of which are optional. Thankfully, removing these 5 characters, as well as, of course, the bioterrorist, leaves us with a neat 20 characters. So I'm going to be ranking those right now from my least favorite of them, number 20, all the way up to my number 1. Here we go. My least favorite is the Field Director, which says, yeah, I can treat disease in a connected city, and I can move one person in a connected city by giving them a little shove. I just find it very limited, very uninteresting, honestly. I know that you can get some things saved by being close to where the action is, but I just don't find it very appealing. Number 19 is Gene Splicer, one of the many characters that lets you have an alternate ability to discover a cure. In this case, you need to be at the research station of the color you are curing, or at a research station of the color you are curing, and you are going to turn in 2 cards of that color, plus 1 card in each of the other 3 colors. That's fine. I just think some of the other ones for alternate discovery, for alternate cures, are a little bit more interesting. So that's why this one's just my 19. The Virologist here is my number 18, and again, this is one of the ones that lets you do an alternate way of finding a cure. And I don't even like it that much. It's, you get to, when you discover a cure, you get to discard 2 cards that match to replace one of the other ones. That takes a bunch of cards. The reason she squeaks in over our Gene Splicer is because of her second ability, which allows her for an action to discard a card from her hand and remove 1 cube of that color from any location on the board. So I think that's really powerful. And while it does cost you that card, I find it is worthwhile putting her at 18 for me. The Epidemiologist here used to be my definitely least favorite card. It used to have a power that was borderline useless, really. It was largely the same text. If you are within a city with someone else, you may, for an action, once per turn, take a card from them. Now, you get to do the exact same thing. Doesn't cost you an action, which makes her much more useful. You still have all of your actions, or you can consider yourself to have 5 actions if you want, and one of them can only be used for this. That's fine too. And so this allows you to be a repository for, curing, or maybe you want to use that card for something else. It's a lot more useful now, and so it's snuck up a little bit for me. Still not a great card, still not one of my favorites, but much better than it used to be before, where it was simply too weak to see any play. 16 is my Quarantine Specialist here, and she's one of the characters that was introduced to the base set when the game was reprinted. And I like her power. It is nice and easy to deal with for the most part, but it is a passive power, and it is one you have to be careful about because you'll miss using it. And the power is quite simply she prevents cubes being placed on the board where she is and anywhere that touches that spot. And so while that's neat, you need to be where the action is. So you cannot get too far away from where you think things are going to show up, or you become largely, powerless. And it's also something that, again, doesn't let you really do anything on your turn that feels different. You just need to end somewhere you hope is going to be useful. Not a great power, really, but I do think it fits well into the base set of the game because I think the power is is clear, it's easy to understand, and can be very simply described. Some of these characters in the expansions, boy, they've got a whole lot of text going on, lots of different qualifiers and abilities and concepts. This one is simple, and even if it's not great, I can quickly use it to show someone how the game works and the different things you can mess with in the game. Number 15 here is the pilot, who has a pretty basic power that has to be explained in a slightly convoluted way. The idea is quite simply, when you don't move traditionally, you make a little hop a few steps away. And so it lets you get around the board without the aid of research stations very well, but you are penalized somewhat by not being allowed to build research stations yourself. Not a big deal, but you got to be aware of that when you choose to take this power. Another great little bonus is you can move someone along with you. But everything this character does, he is simply not the best at. There are other characters that can move more effectively. There are other characters that can move other players more effectively, and other players that don't have the penalty of not being able to build a research station, which again, many games you won't be the one who needs to do that, but it is still something that is nice to have the ability to do. And so, while I think that the power is cool, and it does feel neat to kind of, zip around the board, and it definitely works towards the thematic tie-in of being a pilot, the power itself is just not that good. The local liaison here is our number 14, and she has a pretty cool card sharing power. It's not the best, I would say, but it's a pretty neat one, and that is that you can give a card of the color matching the city you're in, just the color, to someone else, it also somewhere in that color. And I like that if the action is concentrated in the game, then this is pretty useful, because you're probably not going to wander too far away from the action, but you can make yourself very useful with your card giving ability. I like it. It's interesting. Works well. Yes, it's slightly situational, but it definitely comes into play more frequently than I had first suspected. So I enjoy this one. Like I said, there are others that do similar things and I like better, but this is a good one, and it brings into play something that doesn't often come into play, which is not what city are you in, but what color are you in, and I like that. The troubleshooter here is my number 13, and I like it because it really lets you put out fires. It feels good to be the one to be able to, jump into something and put out what's going on, stop it from being a problem. Her top power is actually not that interesting in play. It reads a lot better, for me, in my opinion, than what it actually does in play, and that's simply peek at some upcoming bad cards. The bottom power, being able to go somewhere by taking a direct flight there, showing the card, going to that city, but then keeping the card, is really neat and has a little flexibility that I enjoy as well. It lets you jump somewhere and put a research station there. It lets you jump somewhere near where, the outbreak might happen and deal with it. It just allows you to do some interesting stuff. You could even use it to jump somewhere and then give that card to someone else there waiting for you. And I like that. So this is a cool one. The troubleshooter works for me, and this is one I definitely like using and like giving to other people to use, because it's going to, I think, make them feel like they're a really integral part of the team. They're going to get a lot of stuff done. Talking about getting stuff done and putting out fires, my number 12 here, the first responder, is definitely good at that, and I think slightly better at it than our troubleshooter, which is why it's one higher for me. And the idea here being you can, for an action, jump to a research station, but even cooler than that second power, where you get to, as soon as an epidemic hits, you can then jump straight to that city that now has those 3 cubes out of turn and treat disease there. And that is just awesome. I love that ability. It lets you really, just take care of business. And I think it's a great power. Now, yeah, you're not particularly useful the rest of the time. You're just going to be doing what you normally do. But when that happens, boy, you're going to feel like you've saved yourself at least once or twice in the game. And I think it's a great power for what it brings thematically to the table, being able to, as a first responder, show up before things really go too bad and take care of it, and just from a I'm contributing to the team kind of feel. Really, really great card, the first responder. My number 11 is the Operations Expert, one of the characters from the original game, and it has two powers. The first one being that you can put out research stations without needing the card for an action. That's cool, though it is certainly a little front-loaded for the game. It's very good at first, and then eventually, especially if the game does go on a while, it'll be much less useful. And then the bottom power that you yourself can discard a card at a research station to fly anywhere. Any card, anywhere, as long as you're at a research station. That's great. And it definitely also has that put out a fire ability, the top one making you feel like you're contributing to the team quite a bit. And by that I mean making everybody else more useful. So I like that power very much. I like the combination here, you know. I like that you can help everybody else and then sort of, in a little bit switch to helping you out. It's good. Top power, as I said, becomes a little weaker throughout the game, but it's still a very strong character. My number 11. Breaking into the top 10 here, we have our Pharmacist, who is kind of a spin on the power of the Medic that I'm going to show you in a bit. I haven't gotten to them yet. The power being that you can treat more effectively, right? That's the idea. And so this one is weaker, but it's more far-reaching, and that's pretty cool. I like the way that they tackled this. The idea here being that for an action, you can reveal a card. You don't discard it, you just show it from your hand, and you can treat disease there. And if the disease that you are dealing with, this is the second power, is already cured, well, you can just, for an action, remove it from wherever it is. And I like that power. It's neat. It lets you keep things in check, and there is nothing as annoying as having already cured something, and then it, cropping back enough to start being a problem again. You want to be able to put that disease to bed. And this one allows you to do that a little more effectively. You might even be really close from eradication, and normally chasing down an eradication that isn't showing up particularly much is not worthwhile. You're going to be wasting time trying to eradicate something just so you can have a couple of moments in the game where you go flip over a card and go, oh, look, we don't have to put anything out. That's probably not worth it. But if you are within striking distance with this character, yeah, it might be worth it. And so that's what I like about the Pharmacist. A really neat power, my number 10. My number 9 is the Containment Specialist, which to me kind of feels like a proactive quarantine specialist. The idea being that, yes, you're not preventing cubes from showing on the board, maybe, right? The Quarantine Specialist has a big maybe attached to it. In this one, if you walk into some place that has 2 or more cubes, boom, you remove one of them, as long as they're the same color, okay? So I like that very much. Yes, it keeps you on the move. Yes, it sometimes monopolizes your turn, which is partly why I don't have this power higher, because I do think that if you are playing in a group and someone has this power, they are relegated to doing this. You're not going to be doing a whole lot else. Hey, go over to that area of the world and just walk around a little bit and deal with that stuff. And so your turns feel less interesting, ultimately. Again, that's why the power is not as high. But as far as the power is concerned, what they're able to do, I think is really neat and does keep things in check wherever they're hanging out. So I like this one very much. That is the Containment Specialist. My number 8 is the Field Operative, which definitely is one of my favorites when it comes to alternate ways to cure diseases. I love the power here. On your turn, when you treat, you can take one of those cubes you're treating, put it on the card, and then you may, when you are curing disease, use 3 cubes of the matching color to the 3 cards instead of 5 cards. It's great. Yes, it takes a while, but this character is a great ability to basically count on them taking care of, say, 1 or 2 of those that you need to do. And I think it's just, there is no stopping them. You're not going to be sitting there wondering, when am I going to get that 5th card? Do I really need to run over there and sync up with you so I can get that last card? With this character, unless the cubes really dry up on the board, you are going to get it one way or the other. It's going to happen soon, And so you definitely want to try to give this character the task of curing the one that does have cubes on the board. If blue isn't showing up, then don't send them after blue. That's really not going to work out. But they can kind of pull double duty, both treating the diseases and making it easier for themselves to ultimately cure that one disease. Really works. Love this character. My number 7 spot goes to the Researcher. And if you're having that problem I was talking about of getting all those cards to line up, you're just missing that 5th card, then the Researcher is your answer for that. The ultimate in passing cards, getting cards, just making all of the hands work with the colors that you need. The power feels very useful, it's very powerful, and it's going to be great for the kind of player that loves the puzzle in Pandemic. If you are that kind of player who wants to, sit down and solve it all and really enjoys the fact that the game feels like a puzzle, then this is a great power for that kind of player. That's why it's my number 7. My number 6 is the Medic, which is not really a power for that kind of player. This is for the player who wants to, this is for the brute. This is the, the one who just wants raw strength. And the Medic, of course, is the one that lets you, for a single action, treat all of the diseases from a location, and if that disease has been cured, then they all go away for no action. If you cohabit a spot with cubes that have already been cured, they go away. And so again, not a lot of finesse here, and you are certainly, again, going to be relegated to doing what you do. There's not a lot of wiggle room with this character. Hey, we have a medic, go over there and deal with all of that mess. That's your task. But I think if you're playing the medic and you enjoy what it does, you're going to be just fine with that. It's a great power, certainly very powerful, very clean ability, and it's one of those that usually it's the one that when you explain it to new players, their eyes go the widest, usually with this one. Number 5 goes to the Scientist, a classic, of course, and the simplest one when it comes to being an alternate way to find a cure. Instead of 5 cards, you need 4 cards. Another very strong power, usually does not make new players go as gaga, because when they are learning the game, it seems like the diseases are the scary thing, especially a couple of turns in, right? And so I think the medic looks a little bit better on paper, but definitely only needing those 4 cards is extremely powerful, and having to, connect with the other players, maybe exchange information up to just 4 cards, needing just those 4 cards is really, really strong. So, very simple power, very little text on it, but it takes a fundamental rule and twists it just a little bit while allowing a little more wiggle room as far as your play style than the medic does. The medic is kind of just the hammer, and with this you have a little more wiggle room as to how you want to tackle what's happening in the game, which is why I like it a little bit better. My number 4 here, the Contingency Planner, and really the rest of the characters are characters that really allow you to use the powers they give you to adjust what you want to do. They're characters that give you a lot of flexibility, and they are characters that, for me, enhance the puzzle feel of the game. The Contingency Planner here, by the way, is one of the characters that was added to the base game after the reprint of the game. This was not in the original printing of the game, but it is in the base game now, and it's really a neat one. It's one that I was surprised had not been done before, and it quite simply lets you, for one action, take one of your used events, put it on your card here, and then later on discard that event out of the game completely, not back to the discard pile, to trigger it again. That is great. Having the ability to do one of those powerful events twice in a game can really be a game changer. Now, you can only store one on here, so knowing when to take one, how long to keep it, when to use it, all of that stuff, it does have some interesting ramifications, but the fact that you have the flexibility to pick if you do it, saving it, which one you take back, when is it best to use it, those things, I think a large part of the puzzle in Pandemic hinges on the special event. Well, this character deepens that puzzle for me, which is why I like it so much. That's the Contingency Planner. Breaking into our number 3 here, the Dispatcher. And the Dispatcher quite simply lets you move another pawn, if they allow you, with your actions, with your turns. But more importantly than that is the fact that you can move one pawn to another one. That is incredibly powerful, and again, it is not necessarily apparent when you just read the card how important that is to the game. And even better is when you're able to combine those 2 powers effectively. When I'm able to tell you, okay, I'm going to move you 1 city over because that's where I want you to be, because then I'm going to move myself over to that spot and I'm going to give you this card I have that matches that spot, right? That kind of concept really comes into play heavily here. And I think from a figuring the puzzle out point of view, this is the strongest. The other two above this are a little more fun for me to play. But as far as feeling like you've done your due diligence, you've done your homework, you've figured out this interesting conundrum, I think this is the number one character for that. So if that's your favorite thing in Pandemic, then maybe this is the character for you. But as I said, my number two and my number one just feel a little more fun to me and are very freeing in some ways, which is why I like him so very much. Sometimes with this character, other players feel like you are just a tool to make their plans happen sometimes, And so that can sometimes relegate you to doing just what's needed as opposed to coming up with a plan yourself. If somebody else spots the plan, you're like, okay, sure, that's what I'm gonna do. But the last two here, my top two, really do feel like there's some fun freedom in there, and they enhance what's going on. Still, Dispatcher is fantastic. My number three. The Archivist is my number two role, and they have two powers. One, which nothing else does, and that is you have a hand size of 8 cards. Nobody else can hold 8 cards. You can have 7. I guess technically the contingency planner can have one more if they're saving one on their card, but not like this. And it just feels really cool to hit 8 and not have to discard. Love it. Now, the other power is where I think a big part of that puzzle comes in, but the freedom with it too. You can, on your turn, once spend an action and take from the discard pile something that already got used up. It's a little bit, again, like the contingency planner, but this is one of the city cards. And I love that very much. I love being able to fish one out because I need the 5th one in a color I'm about to cure. I love being able to fish one out because it's going to let me fly somewhere. I love fishing one out and then immediately using it to build a research station where I am for the next player to be able to get to me quickly. Oh, it just goes on. And so that's why I think this one is so interesting and engaging. It's a fantastic power, clever, interesting, just really, really works for me. And if I want to engaging the fun manipulation of the game, nothing else lets me do either one of these things, really. Nobody else lets me fish from the discard pile like this. Nobody else has a hand limit of 8 cards. This is a fantastic card. Very much one that I will try to be, in fact, as often as I can. My number one, I think, is a fantastic power. It is my favorite power. But as you're about to see in 1 second, it's not much of a power at all. This one feels like you are powerful. So let's get to the number one. You'll see what I'm talking about. So here it is, my number one, the Generalist. What is the power? Well, there's not really much of a power. You get, instead of 4 actions on your turn, you get 5. Again, nothing else really does this quite like this with such a simple but so profound statement in the game. And as far as open-ended goes, well, this is about as open-ended as it gets. It doesn't even give you anything different you can do the whole game. You just get to play more of the game. That's great. It's extremely powerful, and I really enjoy this character. I think it's superb. I love being able to not have to concern myself with playing the game a specific way, which you have to do with a lot of the other characters. Oh, this is my power? Well, then I better just focus on dealing with disease cubes, Oh, this is what I do? Well, I better just make sure I'm gathering cards that are different colors or the same color, or I better just concern myself with the special powers, the events. With this, you play the game. The way it's just, with all the rules that are in place, you can do as many or as few of them as you want. You just get to do more of them. And that's why I like this so much. However, the Archivist, I do think is really fun, what it brings. And so it really was a tough choice between these two characters. I think they are both fantastic. And I know I've been asked sometimes which one my favorite is, and I have said the Archivist. But I think they are both great, and today, well, I'm giving the nod to the Generalist just for that open-ended, not hand-holding kind of feel. Hey, here's an extra action every single time you go, do whatever you want to do, and this one is basically always useful. You'll do that pretty much every round. There's sometimes where you waste an action, yeah, just like when you have 4 actions. But 5 actions every round, yeah, that can be useful basically all the time. So that's it for all of these characters. Hopefully that's useful to you. And I know it's a question I get sometimes. Which ones are my favorites? So there you go. Thanks for checking this out with me. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.